Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 25th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. Today, I'm going to do a quick one, actually, and it will just be about the implications of infinity and negation. So, in the everyday language we use, we often employ negations. I wasn't doing this. I am not this. I don't want this. I don't want is actually a fine indication, but for instance, I am not going to move into this house. I am not going to get this job. I'm not going to talk to this person, and so on and so on. Or I am not crazy. I am not stupid. I am not weak. And these negations of using not, what that does is basically because the universe and well, from the series that I've been doing, once you understand that if the universe is infinite, then in that universe there is always a potential for you being stupid, a potential for you being crazy, a potential for you being weak. That is, there are an infinite number of parallel realities where there is a version of you which is weak or stupid or whatever you want. And by saying, I am not something, or I don't want something, or I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to do this, um, the universe does not understand negation. And the reason being is that it cannot help but being infinite. It's fundamental nature. And that means that the version of you which is stupid, of course, there are infinite versions of you, and one of them is intelligent, one of them is stupid. Think Rick and Morty and all the different versions of Ricks there are in the universe. That's actually a very good series if you want to just also get into esoteric things, but in a fun way. Um, so there is a version of you that is stupid. Of course there is. And it cannot not exist, because if you try to remove it from infinity, then infinity is not infinite anymore. It's infinity minus the version of you that is stupid. And that cannot be. Infinity is infinity. And so when you say, I'm not something, then you're actually just giving that version an energy. Our thoughts are very powerful creators. Basically, it's as if your brain was emitting these waves, or via your intention, via your thoughts. It's emitting a sort of an energy which gives life to the version of you that is stupid. It breathes life into it, and it's almost as if it starts um, animating or experiencing itself. And so if you do that, which is actually fine, I mean, it's not that it's a problem. It's just that that's the very counterintuitive thing, is that when you don't want to experience something, chances are you are going to experience it more or less, because you're giving it your focus or your energy or your thoughts. You're breathing life into that version of you. And the idea is, and this is very difficult, it's to acknowledge that all the different versions of you exist, and they have a right to exist. There's also a version of you that is a murderer, psychopath, everything you can imagine, pedophile. I mean, because there are infinite versions of you, there are versions of you where you are that thing. It's just that some people never even envisage being that thing, and it's not even um, their their life's kind of experience, I guess. So they don't have an issue with that. But the moment you have an issue or a trauma with something, it's very hard not to pay attention to it. And so healing yourself and being in balance is when you are in peace, at peace with all the versions of you that potentially exist, and you get to choose consciously which version of you you want to experience, without any judgment. Because ultimately they are just potentials or experiences within infinity, And infinity, since it cannot help but being itself, has to unconditionally love itself. Unconditional, that's where unconditional love comes from. And so, of course, the idea being here at our level is not to say, oh, I love the murderous self as much as the nice self. So it doesn't matter to me. I can kill someone tomorrow and then be nice the rest of the time. Um, in this reality, it's probably not going to play out so nicely for you. And so take from this unconditional love idea only the fact that you acknowledge that all of those versions of you exist. You allow them the right to exist. You're not trying to make sure that the murderer's version of you never existed or denied its existence, because by doing so, you are unknowingly sort of, how should I say, opposing a resistance and thereby breathing energy into that version of you. And it's going to manifest itself then to you saying, oh, if you're not accepting me inside of me, then I'll manifest outside of you as somebody murdering somebody else or whatever, in your neighborhood, in your family or whatever, just so that until you're sort of at peace with that, because the utmost sin is to try to remove anything from infinity. And I think living in balance is when you can consciously choose what versions of you want to experience without judging any of the others, and breathing life into them via your thoughts, via your focus, um, and allowing the others to sort of live within you. For instance, when a murderous thought occurs to you, this happens to me sometimes. I mean, for instance, when I hold a knife, I am fully conscious that I could stab someone with it. And that realization is actually reassuring to me, because it means that the murderous me lives within me and not outside of myself. Um, and that means I've sort of managed to recapture that shadow part. And that thought crosses my mind, and then it goes away. And if you don't judge it, if you just let it come and go, then it's actually fine. It's going to stabilize eventually. And you will, it's not, I don't think that the idea is that you should hope to never have that thought come into your mind ever again. But it doesn't prevent you from being nice. However, what's nice is that you don't have to experience or be, how should I say, face this shadow part of yourself either from within or from without when you're acting in that way. And so I guess this was just a very short brainstorm on negation and the very nature of infinity and why the universe does not understand negatives. And I think our whole civilization and humanity will make a huge leap forward, even in science, for instance, once we understand this, because even in reality, all too often, we're trying to identify what is true. And so you have all these scientists battling it out with arguments and theories and studies and all that stuff, and materialists versus the spiritual people. And even in some of the most progressive or advanced new models of the universe, like the ones of Nassim Haramein, he's still poking fun at the idea of dark matter and kind of making fun of materialist science as if that was false now, and only his model was true. But if you really truly understand the implications of infinity, it means that this true false dichotomy sort of falls apart, because there isn't anything that's technically more true or false. It's just that one theory allows you to experience a tiny part of infinity. And so materialist thinking with dark matter and whatever allows you to explore this little bit. And then Nassim's theory allows you to explore this little bit of infinity. But they're not false. They're just, it's about understanding what you want to experience. And so humanity will make a great leap forward when instead of debating each other to find out who is right and who is wrong, we start debating about, okay, what do we want to experience? And starting from what we want to experience, what are the kind of theories or models that we want to believe in and we want to adhere to in order to unlock a new experience within infinity that hopefully will be beneficial for the whole experience, the journey. So materialist belief is sort of coming to a dead end because, I mean, with climate change, with all these challenges we're facing, materialism cannot answer all of those problems. But moving into another experience um, does not require just some new technologies, some new theories that go beyond materialism, but it's seeing the big picture first and then choosing the new boundaries within which you want to experience. Because you cannot experience infinity, you have to give it structure. Well, maybe I'll make this just a little longer than thought, but imagine if really our reality is just light. It's just living light. Like all of this is just little pixels of color. Then technically, there is no reason why we couldn't fly. We couldn't, I don't know, have superpowers like Dragon Ball Z. Ultimately, if it's just living light, if it's just light, then what happens in reality, in our reality that we experience, should be no different than what your monitor can basically display. If your monitor can display an image, then it should be possible, or that thing exists within infinity. But, and this is the very important part, if the limitations that you set for yourself are too hazy or too far, let's say too wide compared to your level of consciousness, and this is really key here, then you face self-destruction. So don't think this is too difficult to imagine, but let's pretend that right now everyone sort of realizes that they have the same powers as Goku from Dragon Ball Z. How long do you think before some idiot destroys the planet with an energy ball and blows this kind of consensual reality to the bits and pieces? It's the same thing as computer programs and interfaces and operating systems. The reasons we put interfaces and higher level languages and operating systems on top of ones and zeros is precisely so you have a limitation, but also so that you cannot break your computer. And so I think right now we're at a part of our collective evolution where we gain sort of a insight into this, into the fact that ultimately you can build anything out of light, out of these fundamental building blocks. You can make this reality display anything just like your screen can display anything. But consciously deciding to let's not do that right now because we don't have the level of consciousness necessary to harness a level of freedom, so to speak, within infinity, a level of freedom or powers of that magnitude for now. And then as we grow in consciousness, then perhaps that will come someday. And this has never left us. What people could do in modifying the reality and the interface 500 years ago is incomparable to what we can do now. 3D printing for someone of the 15th century is fundamentally not so different from materializing things with your thoughts. For them, it's really magic. Um, for us, it's just one step in this infinitely long evolutionary journey and growth in consciousness to allow us to build an experience within infinity, understanding. And now we can understand that all it is just uh, sort of liquid light or living light that you could mold, technically, potentially, that you could mold into anything. And the only reason why we can't do that is because our level of consciousness is still too small. Um, so I hope you found this interesting, and don't hesitate to leave comments if you have any questions.